Hi, my name is Mark Day. Today I'll be talking about corporate communications, more specifically the failure in corporate communications. As I'll be discussing communications throughout this presentation, I thought I would start by defining exactly what I mean by communications, and there are several components that make up the communications process. One is the source. The source is the message originator. And then you have the message itself, which is the information being transmitted from the source to the receiver. And of course you have the receiver, which is the one that must receive and interpret the message. And whether or not that message is successful is determined by the receiver. And then you have the channel, which is the way the message is transmitted to the receiver. And then you have noise, which is anything out there that can interfere with the message transmission. And of course you have feedback, which is a response to the message itself. Without this feedback, you'll never know whether the message was received successfully. And finally, you have context. This is the communications environment. This is the environment in which communication is transmitted, such as the boardroom or the water cooler. Now, in corporate communications, the company's reputation relies on how well the brand is represented, how well the message is communicated to either the public or internally, such as to other executives and employees. Now, a company has a responsibility to represent or present their employees with the company's core values, their ethical standards, their vision, exactly how they expect their day-to-day business to be conducted. They need to be open and transparent with their financials at all times. Now, within a corporation, the communications department is a management function, just like marketing, finance, or operation. Within a corporation, there are several types of communications. Those types of communications are employee communications, investor relations, marketing, government relations, and finally summary communications. Now, the ability to communicate, especially in front of a large crowd, is rated right up there as one of the #1 traits admired the most in a leader. It can be the be-all, end-all of a company, and able to get that message across in the proper format and the right medium, and where it's understood and actually persuaded or inspired audience is critical. Now, companies have been severely damaged or even destroyed with poor communications, by either not communicating the company's core values, not communicating the company's vision, and resting on prior success and no longer pushing productivity or innovation. And one of those failed companies was Nokia. And Nokia once was a giant cell phone manufacturer, but they struggled to bring new technology to the market. They were very indecisive, unfocused. They failed to innovate, and they had a very lack of vision. Overall, it was complete failure of leadership at the top levels. And they ended up simply fading away as the new young upstart companies really took over. Now, another failed company was Enron. Enron was a real tragic failure overall. It started out as a pipeline company and grew into one of the world's largest energy traders. It was a massive failure. They didn't communicate the company's core values. They didn't communicate the company's ethical standards or their vision. It was complete poor leadership oversight from the beginning. And overall, over 28,500 employees lost their jobs, retirement accounts completely wiped out, and many investors lost their entire life savings. At the time, Ken Lay was the CEO, and they had started hearings in which he ended up dying of a heart attack in the middle of those hearings. But then you had Jeffrey Skilling, the CEO of COO, who ended up being sentenced to 24 years in prison for the part he played in the failure of Enron. Now, during all this, they were cooking the books, keeping 2 sets of books. Everything looked to be on the up and up right to the end. Executives continued to get their top bonuses and top pay right up to the very end. And another company back in 2009 was AT&T, which is another giant company. They started to receive complaints from all their customers for slow networks, poor upgrades in any of their software for their phones. And one of the reasons they put all their eggs into one basket was the iPhone. And the iPhone turned out to be a real data hog and was real sluggish on the networks. Now, they failed to keep up with all the new innovations like tethering and instant messaging, And during all this time, they failed to get out ahead of the problem and explain to the customer exactly what was happening and why they were slow to get to these new technologies. They started receiving so many customer complaints that they ended up being named or rated as the nation's #1 worst cell phone carrier. Now they started to turn this around when they started to bring in other cell phone manufacturers. They started to get into the new smartphone technology and a major PR blitz. They turned this around to be one of the nation's top carriers once again. But all of it started really with the real failure in communications at the corporate level. And the communications department often are seen as a mouthpiece of the company. They're responsible for how the public perceives them, and they report directly to the CEO. They really need to have a realistic and current view of the business environment at all times. And at times, the message can actually be more important than the product itself. They can persuade or inspire people to purchase stuff that may otherwise not be the top product on the market. And they also maintain the branding of the company, which is critical. Now, there are some certain areas where we see more failures than others, and some of those most often failures that we see are in the lack of focus, where a company, the communication is not prioritized, meetings are ineffective or inefficient, or people are just bogged down with too many meetings during the day. Then you have a failure of purpose, when we're unable to communicate well on a day-to-day basis, and it's generally symptomatic of a large communications disruption. And then you have a lack of innovation. Imagine yourself in a meeting where a team is presenting a new project, product, or process, and the audience is just simply checked out. Half the room's checking their phones or checking their calendar for the rest of the day. And then you have a drop in morale, which is really a sum of all those issues I just discussed, where people who work for the company, they're looking for a new job, they're finding a way out. And then you have the loss of credibility. This can happen to both a company and an individual. For an individual, your ability to express yourself confidently, persuasively, directly. And in a company, the way your goals and innovations are represented outwardly through client meetings or public relations has an immediate impact on your business metrics. Things like sales and stock price will start to decline. Now we're getting close to the end here. I just want to summarize what I discussed here. At the beginning of it, we talked about communications and exactly how we define communications. Well, there were several components. We talked about the source, the message itself, the information being transmitted, and of course the receiver, which was the receiver of that message, the one responsible for interpreting that message. And then you have the channel, the way in which the message is transmitted to the receiver. And then you have noise, where the overall environment, noise, anything that can interfere with the message itself. Then you have feedback. Feedback is a response to the message and determines whether you were successful in transmitting that message to the receiver. And finally, you have context, the environment in which the message is transmitted. Talk about how a company's reputation can rest in the hands of corporate communications department, and how important it is to protect the brand and how it's presented to the public at all times. Talk about communications in the corporation as a management function, just like marketing, finance, or operations. We talked about the different types of communications in the corporation. You have employee communications, investor relations, marketing, government relations, and finally summary communications. We talked about how the ability to communicate, specifically in front of a large audience, is one of the #1 rated traits that people admire in a leader. And then we talked about several of the companies that had massive failures in communications, like companies like Nokia, Enron, and AT&T back in 2009 when they put all their eggs in one basket with the iPhone. We talked about where do we most often see failures, and there were areas like lack of focus, failure of purpose, lack of innovation, a drop in morale, and finally we lost credibility. Now, although we've learned a lot from the mistakes that these companies made, we will continue to see companies out there who just don't place the importance that communication deserves on corporate communication. So we will continue to see failures like this in the future. Now, that's all I have for you today, so Thank you for your time.